Hey guys, welcome back to the Patar Project. I'm your host, Nick Patar. Thank you so much for joining me once again. Today, I'm joined by Lachie Stuart. Lachie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to jump on.
Mate, thanks for having me on. I'm very excited to be on here. As I was just saying, I've listened to probably over 15 of your episodes, and I was just listening to the one where was a live recording of your speech. So it's cool to be able to have a conversation with you, mate, because you're doing some incredible stuff.
Appreciate it, man. And first off the bat, what are you grateful for today?
I was thinking about this. I've got so much to be grateful for. I'm really, really grateful for the people in my life. Like, obviously, I just celebrated our marriage last week or the week 2 weeks ago, and just the love I felt from all the people in our life. You know, the outpourings on social media, but just even our closest friends and family to celebrate that day was awesome. So I'm grateful for all of the friends and family in my life.
And congrats on that, by the way. That's awesome.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Now, for people who don't know who you are, Lachie, who are you? And tell me a bit about your upbringing and what you do.
Yep, awesome. So I'm a men's performance coach, and I grew up in Toowoomba, which is 2 hours west of Vegas or Brizzy, uh, in Queensland. My upbringing was active, is how I like to look at it. Like from a young age, my mother grew up on a farm, so we spent a lot of time between Toowoomba and the farm, and that was a lot of outdoor activities. I was always dressing up and playing Lord of the Rings and running and riding motorbikes and doing whatever I could to keep active. And I think, I was fortunate to be exposed to so much because I think that's given me a good knack at problem solving and always believing that I can have a crack at, doing something. I taught myself to surf. I've taught myself so many things just because I had that self belief that, I've learned things before I can learn more. Um, but yeah, like a lot of young Australian blokes, I grew up with the dream of being a professional athlete. From about the age of 10, I was excelling in athletics. So was a state champion 400 meter and 800 meter runner, and then placed second and all that sort of stuff at nationals, which was awesome. But going to a rugby school, you sort of feel that peer pressure to want to fit in and be a jock. So as I got older, I stopped focusing on athletics as much. And, skateboarding, absolutely love skateboarding more than anything. But yeah, just really wanted to fit in because I was bullied. I was skinny, even though I was a good athlete like that. I guess gave me a bit of a reputation, but I was still picked on by the rugby boys. So I was like, well, I can either keep doing the athletics thing, or I can just learn to be good at rugby. And I focused a lot of my time and energy on doing that, and was lucky to play first 15 and do all that sort of stuff, and became cool. What I liked, or I felt like I fit in, even though I looked like I fit in, but I didn't really fit in. I still would sit in the circle at lunch. I didn't feel like I had much to offer or talk about because I was so self conscious for being there. But from the outside looking in, people thought like he's nailed it. He's a good athlete playing top level rugby and all that sort of stuff. But all through high school, I was still bullied, and obviously that's why I dealt with the low self esteem and a whole heap of crap like that. Moving out of school, the goal was still the same. I wanted to play professional rugby. From that, because I thought my level, or I wanted to be successful, and the only way I really believed that I could be successful was in sport. Athletics, unfortunately, didn't have any money, so I dropped that and went obviously with rugby. Um, and throughout that time, I had a partner, what I would consider a long term partner. I think we were together for 5 6 years, which is a long time throughout high school, etc. Moving our way, but that whole time was just the most toxic kind of relationship anyone could be a part of. And I was at fault, like cheating, lying, manipulating, all of that sort of stuff for multiple reasons. Obviously, um, when you're playing like top level rugby and stuff, it's easy to get attention from females, but also on the flip side is that I was so insecure and I didn't feel valued, and I went through moments where I didn't feel valued, I didn't feel loved, even though that was complete bullshit. There were things that were missing, and there was work that needed to be done, although I tended to ignore that for a couple of years. So obviously the best thing that ever happened, even at the time it broke my heart, she kicked me to the curb, And the only thing that I knew I wanted to do was once again be successful, because my idea of what successful was earning a lot of money, being famous, getting all the girls, and having the lads love you. So once again, going back to footy, I moved over to France to play. And after about 3 months, the first 3 months were gnarly. Like, it was everything that I pictured it to be and more. After the 3 months, those same insecurities started bubbling up, and I noticed the same habits and challenges popping up. Insecurity, lying, cheating, manipulating, low self-esteem, and just some alcohol, all of that sort of jazz. So I ended up moving back to Oz. And when I came back, it was probably the most destructive 9 months of my life. But also, I think it's like that breakdown to breakthrough period of your life where I just consumed more drugs than I'd ever consumed in my life. I partied, drank more than I'd ever drank. And I think it was at a point where I was like, well, I've always wanted to be successful. And now that rugby's gone and everything else is gone, I felt like my life was falling apart. I didn't have a partner. Well, I ended up finding one, but I didn't feel like anything was going for me. So, yeah, I call it, I just had like a big 9 month tantrum. I didn't know how to express what I was feeling. And so I just tried to, lash out when I was drunk, but then any other time I just wanted to numb and avoid the pain. And it got to a point where I found myself being arrested, sitting in a gutter at the bottom of a nightclub. And that was that moment in my life where I was sitting there and I was like, I feel disgusting. Like, I'm not supposed to, and this is not how I pictured my life turning out. And I don't believe deep down I'm the kind of person who should be sitting in this position. And from that moment, I was like, well, if everything goes to plan, if I end up in a better position, I'll never find myself in this position again. And it feels like, I always say it feels like 2 weeks, but it was a bit longer. Like, a few things happened. A bloke that I respected gave me a book called The Four Agreements. And because I respected him so much, I read it. And that started the whole journey of like, I can be better and I'm going to make something for myself that's outside of sport. Like, I believe as a bloke, we have the ability to change. I think more so as a fixed mindset kind of guy back then. And yeah, it just created this ripple effect. I started going to read more books, going to networking events, just putting myself out there on social media. And that was the beginning of what now is. And it completely transformed my life.
That's amazing, dude. No, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying because I went to a rugby league school and I've always been skinny and I'm still skinny now. But I went through a period where I've spoken about this before. I actually went down a path of steroids and that because I was,
Oh, did you?
yeah, because I hated being skinny and I felt like I had to be bigger to, succeed in rugby league and get to the top, and not the right way to do it, definitely not. But that is the path I went down, and I realized I was not happy. Yeah, I had, I was bigger, I was musclier, and I was performing better on the field, but inside I knew it was wrong, and it just built more insecurities, and I think that's what kind of stopped me playing footy altogether, was that because I lost the love for the game then. I felt like I was playing to impress other people instead of playing for my own happiness and joy. So for you being skinny, you didn't go down the steroid path at all, but did you just eat heaps and train heaps to try and build that muscle up and fit in more?
Yeah, 100%. Like, even when I was playing first 15, like I was 73 kilos. I didn't understand much about body types and all that sort of stuff back then. But like grade 10, 11, 12, I was like, I'm going to hit 100 kilos. That's what I want to do. It was just like the 100 club. All the big boys were 100. So I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm like, no fucking chance. I'm 5'11" and built like a rake, mate. There's no way I'm going to that. Like, the most I've been is 90 when I was in France, and that was not healthy. So yeah, I did a whole heap of weight training, even till I was about 20. I don't reckon I really bulked up until after I'd finished playing footy and I started doing CrossFit. Like, I've got photos when I finished playing footy and I was still just a string bean. But like, I think that also helped me because I was fast and I could, step more. But now I feel like if I was this build now playing footy, I would be playing the best footy I've ever played. But, that was a whole different kind of training from Olympic lifting, powerlifting, Yeah, and just eating more, like knowing actually what I'm putting in my body. Like, um, unfortunately, like I was growing up, unfortunately, fortunately, the marketing geniuses got myself and mum and dad, and I was eating Nutrigrain and all these things that were promoted as like awesome for athletes and stuff. And now you look at it and you're like, it's still all packaged shit. Like it's not good necessarily for a kid and actually building muscle and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I went through, bro, like I used to live off Masashi bulk. I don't know if that protein's still around, but Masashi bulk, and I went on these max gainers. I was doing everything like to try and put on weight. And the maximum I got at school was 74 kilos. And like for those who've like 5'11", I'm not that tall, but um, yeah, I really struggled to put on muscle. I was always lean, so I looked like muscly, but that was because I was a rake and ran a lot and was super active, but I was never like big and bulky until literally probably the last 4 years. So from 26 onwards.
That's crazy. And like for me, I'm 74 kilos now, and I think it would have been 4 or 5 years ago. I was the same weight, and when I went on steroids, I blew up to the most. I think was 88, 89 kilos, and that was
Jacked.
that was in a year, bro.
People would have been like, "What is going on?"
Yeah, it was fucking crazy, bro. And then I
That's
stopped
what.
playing. I stopped playing footy and
Yeah.
got into running, and then I've just lost all the weight again.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with like one of my mates went on steroids, um, maybe like 2012, and he's skinnier than I am, and he just blew up. But he also ballooned up where he just looked like not jacked. He just looked like real watery if I
Yeah, you look
pricked him with a
fluffy.
balloon. Yeah, 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 yeah. But as soon as he couldn't afford to keep going on the steroids, he lost it all. And I was like, well, why would I do that? Like I've always been believed in putting in the work. Like I don't believe in for me, steroid use is like just fucking put in the work. Like there's I understand body types and everything like that, but there has to be a way that everyone can do it if you find the right training style. And for me, it took literally, I started weight training probably when I was 15. And it took me till 26 to find, and it's not necessarily CrossFit. It was probably just actually getting challenged with the kind of training that I was doing with, building my squat up to 180 and all of these sorts of things. Whereas in the past, I never really challenged myself like that. And when you're training like that, you're eating like a fucking horse, you're sleeping better, like, or you focus more on your recovery. So there was so many other um, things that I was prioritizing that helped me do that. And it's been fun. It's funny. We're probably talking about body image here, but it's funny that blokes don't really talk about it. But since I've been running more, like I've stripped, like I look at my forearms and everything like that. I'm like, I'm skinny again. Like I've gone back and I'm not, but I look at it compared to what they used to be like. I'm like, I feel real just skinny again. I always say to the boys, and it's not a big deal, but then I'm like, I just want to fucking go pump some weights again to get my forearms jacked up and my arms jacked up again. Cause it makes you feel confident, makes you feel solid. But also, I love being able to run fast again. I love not hurting, like my joints aren't hurting. And I've got more mobility than I had because I was like a brick before.
Mm, yeah,
So there's pros and cons with everything, man.
exactly. I think it's just about getting that good balance. Like when I was that top weight, bro, I was so slow. Like I used to be so fast, then I went slow, not fit, couldn't even last 80 minutes on the field. I was heaving, and bro,
Really?
my
What position
mobility.
were you?
I was like wing, fullback, center,
Yeah. You
and
couldn't last 80.
I
That's
was I was
wild.
fucked. Yeah,
Just blame it on your work rate, man. You're working hard.
yeah, I'll say that. But now I can go do like long endurance stuff and like not really an issue. And it's just stripping the weight back and training properly and not focusing on, external stuff to get you to your certain body image. It's just the hard work and eating right.
What are you training for at the moment?
So this year I was meant to do a 50K race and a 100K race. COVID fucked
The
those up.
ultras.
Yeah. So I went into the ultra space. Now, not really training for anything at the moment,
Yeah.
but who knows what next year will bring up.
Do you reckon you'll give him another crack next year?
Yeah, well, the 50K I got moved to next year, so
Yep.
I might still give it a crack. Yeah,
Is it pretty intense doing that?
yeah. So the track that I'm meant to do is probably it's one of the hardest tracks in Australia. I think it's 1,200 meters elevation.
Far out. That's mental. That'll
Yeah,
be a good challenge.
sure will, man. It's fucking crazy, man. And you mentioned, let's talk about footy culture, bro. It can be
Yep.
very toxic, and for me, I hated it. I hated going to training. You would talk about either footy, girls, drinks, drugs, all that kind of stuff, and then after the games, you have to go back to the clubhouse. Like, I hated it. What did you kind of fit into that, or how did you go about that?
What I feel like I made myself fit into it, but I think deep down I never enjoyed it because there was some things that go on in that. It's like I got involved in it. Don't get me wrong, but I think deep down I never like all the shit talk. Like it's fun to have a bit of banter, but when you know it's bullying someone or physically harming someone or whatever is going on, or it's like the fact that I was saying to a bloke the other day who was blind on Saturday night. I was like, do you ever just sit there and smash pints of water? Like you don't do that, but you try and smash pints of beer. Like it doesn't make much sense to you when you actually think about it logically. And we think that it's manly to get on the piss, and that's when us blokes open up. So like there were some things that I loved about it, but there was being a part of the rugby culture got me in more trouble than it added value to ultimately added value to my life. I have a lot of great memories and I got a lot of incredible experiences, but I do believe that if we were taught not to need alcohol, I would have had this, probably even better experiences because I wouldn't have had the hangovers the next days, or I wouldn't have gotten the fights or spewed up on the bars or whatever happened. So, I did find it challenging. But once again, it's the big dick swing in culture where it's like, well, you're in an environment of testosterone fueled blokes who use their bodies to win ultimately, and within that team there's got to be someone like that, and you can get that through being the biggest piss drinker on the team, banging the most girls, or being the best player, right? Like there's 3 awards going. One of them's like public, the other 2 are more so for the boys. And if I wasn't, so I played in some pretty strong teams, so if I knew I wasn't going to be the best player, I was like, well, sure as shit, I can get one of the other awards if I really work hard for it. It's like the things that you may do to get there is not worth it. Doesn't make you a better bloke.
Exactly, and that's probably why I never quite fit in that environment. Like on the footy field, I was fine, but yeah, after it, I'm someone I like deep connection and conversations, whereas it's all small talk and surface level shit. So for me, I never quite fit in there.
Yeah. Knowing what I know now, I'd love to go back into it though, purely because it's like a game to try and get blokes to open up now. Like, how can I do that without them needing to smash a million pints? Like back when I was awkward and uncomfortable in conversation and I couldn't communicate about what I was experiencing. Like, I think all blokes know there's always this not tension, but there is something in the air that that's not being said. And it's generally at 2 a.m. when it gets said. But how do we create a culture where that stuff gets to start, the conversations start happening earlier? Because, you think about the footy culture, there's a lot of suicide in the rugby community, the rugby league and the rugby union communities. But, and we sit there going, I wish I could have done more. Well, it's like, we can. Like, why do we not go have a beer, go do that sort of stuff? But why aren't we educating guys in the locker room or at training sessions when you're generally not on the beer on how to connect with your mates and talk about what's really going on or share what's really going on for you? We don't ever do that. And because, it's generally a monkey see, monkey do culture because we want to fit in. So we need people to step up. And that's why I think, what you're doing with the podcast, and there's a lot of talking obviously to the rugby culture, there's a lot of players and athletes at the moment who are starting to open up about it, which I think is awesome. But I would also love to see how they're showing up at the club. I'm not saying just be super disciplined and cut out all the banter and everything and don't ever have beers. I still do that. And I think that's fantastic. But how are you, what environment have you got set for the boys who are, the young guys who are coming in at 17, 18, and they've looked up to, um, I'll just say Matty Johns because he was the first person that came to my thoughts. But like for imagine playing with Matty Johns back in the day, and you've looked up to him for forever, and you're a 17-year-old dude going straight from school to play NRL, and maybe the culture that they had. I don't know what the culture was like. I'm not commenting on that, but that's why I think even what you're doing, right? You're creating a great culture for your daughter to come into, but also the people around you. And that's what I hope I'm doing as well. I love a beer. I love just being with the boys, but I also have a standard for what I'll tolerate. And I also, like I was saying before I went off on this tangent, is like, it's a game for me. If I don't feel like I've connected with a mate for a while, my goal is to connect with them before they get wankered drunk.
Definitely. And it's just about breaking the ice. It can be hard, but once you move past that first barrier and make that first move, people will pretty easily open up most of the times. And the way I look at it when it comes to footy is you'll do anything for your teammate or your brother on the footy field, but what about off the field when they're in trouble?
Yeah, exactly. Which, yeah, I used to love it on the field, like the aggression. And when you get in a scrap or, someone would make a mistake and you pat them on the bum and you're always there. But it's like, well, do they know that you're walking side by side, as you said, off the field? Do they feel like they can turn to you and say, man, I'm having a Barney with my missus, or I've got my money's, I've got a gambling problem, or I've got this going on, like things that are going on. Most blokes don't talk about it until you see it in the paper, or obviously if you're not playing at professional levels, like your mate don't talk about it until you realize that they're dating another bird. And you're like, fuck, I didn't even realize you split up with your missus. And it's like, oh, it happened like 6 months ago. Lost my business as well. And you're like, what? You didn't tell me any of this. It's like, well, conversation never came up. So I guarantee anyone who's listening to this, you would have mates that are struggling in some way that I guarantee you probably don't know about. And the goal is, and I always talk about this, like I have on my phone, my favorites list. I obviously have my family and then my 5 closest mates, and I make the effort to call them every single week. And sometimes we will have an awesome, like a deep and meaning, or every conversation is meaningful, but like a real deep conversation about stuff. Some other times we don't, we just shoot the shit, but it's just about continuing to show up, because mateship or friendship is not like you just get it and it's there. So you have to work at it every day, like you do with everything else. And that's what I think has to happen. Even going back to the footy culture, it's like, that's what has to happen in the cultures. Like we have to work at changing that and creating that every day.
Definitely agree. And that's what I do, like with my mates, always make sure, I'm reaching out to them. And as you said, it could just be banter or talking shit, or it can be a deep, conversation. And by you doing that, when shit does hit the fucking ceiling and you're in a dark spot, you know who to go to then. You're not trying to battle it by yourself and not knowing who to go to. But by you having those conversations, like, yeah, sweet, I can go to him. We've had those conversations before, we'll be able to talk about things.
100%. And it's exactly that. Like you just need people to know it, not just, we've got Are You Okay Day, which is a great awareness to raise it, but it means shit if you aren't, backing it up with action, if you aren't continuing to check in, if you don't make people feel heard or valued. And that's why I think, and once again, there's a lot of skills that need to be developed around communication when we are asking someone if they're okay. It's like, how do we hold space? How do we deliver the follow-up questions? How do we respond when someone does say something? Because even, someone might say, oh, I am thinking about killing myself. And some people go, fuck. And just if I said that to you and I saw that's how you responded, I'm probably not going to want to say anything else, because we've just made an uncomfortable space. People don't like being uncomfortable. So it's also then, that's why I think everyone should do their mental health first aid. But how do we respond, not react to when people give us a response that's out of the ordinary? How do we make them, it's like, well, regardless of what's currently going on for you, I'm here regardless. And I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel that way. And that's why, once again, if you're not in those positions regularly, which I hope people aren't, you can practice these things. And that's why, you do your CPR every year. Well, I do my CPR and first aid every year. whatever. But it's like you can stay up to date with your mental health first aid because you keep practicing this stuff for if it ever happens in a real life event.
Definitely. And I love that you did mention, mental health first aid, because I'm currently doing mine at the moment. And it's not really about stuff that we don't know. It's kind of recapping what we do know and giving you the tools and tips how to deal with it when someone's in that situation. And definitely recommend everyone go and do it.
Exactly. It's got to be front of mind. Like a lot of things in life that we want to improve upon, or just I feel a lot of things that we need, we aren't really taught. We don't, as men, we don't go through rites of passages anymore. Like that's why I think there's a lot of um, men that I see in I was one of these blokes. Like I was a 26-year-old boy. Like I wasn't a man. I had more facial hair and chest hair, and my voice was deeper, but like I still carried on like a boy. I didn't take responsibility. I had tantrums. I couldn't regulate my emotions, and I just blamed everyone. So, but I was never taught that. I was never given a roadmap, and I wasn't ever exposed to blokes who were like that. But then when I started realizing that I could change things, I could take ownership, I was like, it's pretty cool. I can do this for other areas and I can do this to better myself, which can help better other people. And obviously we look at mental health, which is something that's obviously important to both of us, but it should be important to everyone, right? Mental health, mental wealth, whatever you want to look at it like, but we all have it. Right? It's like a health reading. So how do we look after it? Like there's so many things that come into our mental health. The way I look at it, it's like sleep, communication, or that's why I talk about the 8 areas. But there's skills within that we can continually be working at. That when we grow in that area, there's still going to be resistance. There's still going to be struggle within it. But when we grow in that area, it's going to make us a better bloke. It might improve your relationships. It might improve your finances. It might improve your health. And the ripple effect of that is you have an overall better mental health score is what I would look at it like. But we don't, mental health is scary for a lot of people to talk about, or it's just not spoken about at all. So how do we improve things that aren't spoken about?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, you mentioned Are You OK Day earlier, which great initiative. Yes, it spreads awareness for one day and you get all these people come out of the woodworks and share all the stuff, but then you don't hear from them again. And I'm a big believer actions speak way louder than words. Don't just post for one day and then not post for, the next 12 months. Post, share awareness, great, but then go and text 5 of your closest friends as you do and as I do and actually have those conversations, because that's how we're going to, stop people going below that line and going down a dark road.
Yeah, it's one of the most frustrating things on social media is there's people that I see that I speak to things like that, and they're always coming saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, going to do that. And you're like, awesome. If you do that, fantastic. And then I don't see anything change. But then whenever there's a awareness raise, and once again, raising awareness is fantastic. Like, but they just share all this stuff. And I'm just, I'll see it pop up and I'm just like, I just wish you would just read what you just posted and act upon it for yourself. So many of us are trying to help the whole fucking world. Like, even people care about followers and listens and views and all that sort of stuff, which, cool, you might get sponsorship, you get money, but like most of us, our own backyard isn't even tidy. So stop trying to change the fucking world and just change yourself and then change your environment, which might be, some people's close reach might be 15 people, and then slowly expand. But just, you're always got to start with that and focus on that. And then the ripple effect of that can, if you do it well, might go global. But I'm not focused on, I couldn't give a shit about how many people listen to stuff or whatever of mine. It's just like the amount of people that are reaching out to me. That's what I guess score myself in how well my message has been heard and the impact that I'm having. And I think for anyone listening to this, like, don't stop sharing this, raising awareness and sharing content that inspires you or you believe can add value to people. I think that's brilliant, but I also want you to make sure that you're implementing it into your own life. And then also you're having the conversations or facilitating that space to have to make people that are close to you look at implementing things like that into your own life. I think that's where we need to start.
Yeah, exactly. If everyone just focused on their own backyard and, having those conversations, it's just going to create a ripple effect. And just like this podcast, both of our followings are going to listen. They're going to see two blokes talking about mental health and all this stuff, and they're like, oh, cool. If these guys can talk about it, why can't I? And then they're going to go and speak about it, and just continues on. And, one day mental health will be normalized and there won't be such a stigma around it. So just got to have one conversation at a time.
Yeah, I think even going back to what you just said there, like when people do start talking about that, if you've never been in an environment where the conversation has gone on, or open and vulnerable conversations is going on, it can be a daunting thing to start having. You don't know, what do I actually say, or how does it come about? And I think one of the best things that I ever did was like attend men's group or men's circle. We used to run them. Because blokes could come into an environment where the intention was to talk about those things. And even if they didn't say anything, they could listen to what was going on for other blokes, and it could help them maybe understand more about what's going on in their own mind, or even just how they articulate themselves. They could go, fuck, that's what I wanted to, that's what's been going on for me. And that's so beautifully said. Now I can go home and talk to my partner about that, or I can go out of this room and talk to my mates about it. But if people don't have access to that, listening to podcasts, like if I could go back, like using your podcast as an example, if I knew some stuff was going on in my life, I would copy an episode of share an episode of yours to a mate and say, I just listened to this episode. It was so eye-opening and I really resonated with it. That could be a nice soft way to start having those conversations with your mate, because one, they're going to go, oh, what's this podcast about? Oh, it's about mental health and growing. Cool. So he must be thinking about that at least. Let's listen to the content, and whatever the exact topic is going on, or the story that goes with it. It's like they can then come back and go, oh, why did you resonate with it? Or what did you take away from that? And then all of a sudden you've now created that conversation. It's not weird anymore. But then some people can just literally sit down and go, I'm not feeling the best, man. This is why. And awesome. So however people go about it is brilliant. But for those who are sort of don't know where to start, there's some options that I would go back and use if I was starting again.
Yeah, just find what works for you. Don't go all guns blazing. And for me, my number one rule when it comes to being vulnerable and sharing your feelings is, if you're going to go to someone, first ask their permission if you can share their feelings. Because if you don't ask their permission and you just unload all your emotions and feelings on them, they're going to be like, holy fuck, what is happening right now? So Definitely my number one rule is ask for permission.
And if they say no, don't take it personally. It's just like, not because everyone's got their own shit going on. There's some days where people unload, and going back to permission, a lot of people don't ask me for permission, and I might be having a rough day, or I've just had 8 back-to-back meetings with clients and I'm zonked. I have nothing to give emotionally, or I just can't listen. And you're sitting there and you're like, I can't do this right now. And then once again, it's like some people take that personally, and it's not personal. Just had a hectic fucking day, and let's chat about this tomorrow, or, chat to another mate, or whatever that looks like. So permission, as you said, is amazing. Now
let's talk on personal development. Now I could relate to you how, a book and events kind of changed like my life. For me, you follow Gary Vee, do you?
Yeah, I do follow Gary Vee.
When he came to Australia, I went to his event. Bro, that put me on the path that I am now. Oh, bro, it was fucking good, eh? Yeah. Just being in that crowd, listening to him, the other speakers, the way he moves the crowd and the way he impacts people, I was like, fuck, like,
he just doesn't bullshit. Like, and his energy, like, you can actually, he's one of those people that you just know his work ethic is run by his just desire and passion for what he does. Like, he genuinely gives a shit, right? I feel there's people who, was that one of the Success Resources events, or was that, yeah, I went to that one as well. But there's some people who you're just like, I think they're just doing what they do because they can make some money or whatever, which is fine. Everyone's got to make money. But like Gary Vee, when I listen to him, I'm like, fuck, his energy and his belief in himself and other people to achieve what he's talking about is second to none, and it just gets you going.
Yeah, he had a massive impact, and bro, he's the one who sparked all this shit that I'm doing now. Like for for you, how important is personal development?
It's as important as, in my opinion, not maybe not breathing, but it's pretty up there. Like looking after your physical health, personal development helps you understand the other areas of your life. Like everyone, or more, sorry, not everyone, but more and more people are starting to realize the importance of training your body, right? Like to look after your mobility. Breath work's a huge thing. And exercise, right? We know how good that makes us feel, but personal development has never really been, it's not spoken about at school. We learn about math, science, and various other things, but I guess the personal development is the understanding of self, the learning of self. And when you can get to a point where you know, and I always go back to like, what do I want from my life? Not who am I, but what do I want from my life? I can then take the personal development journey through some phases around, okay, well, what's the next step that I need to learn, or the next thing that I need to learn that's going to help me achieve that within my life? And for me, when it's, I started what I would say personal development from a logical or a textbook style of learning. For me, it was, I need to make money because I'm fucking broke and I hate what I'm doing with my life at this point in time. And I thought to myself, and it was learn money, but also understand my emotions because I was erratic. But if I could do those two things, if I could make some money and if I could get my emotions under control, they would have the most significant impact on my overall quality of life. And then as I started to do that, I started then going, cool, now I want to learn more about how to communicate better. Now I want to learn how to read fast. And now I want to run my own business so I can have my own hours. And it's just continuing to grow. And I think it's one of those things that we should never stop, because what made me happy 3 years ago might not make me as happy as the things that I'm doing now. And I know that, like anything, if we become stagnant, it's boring. So, and it's not just always, I became a personal development snob for like 4 years, where I thought I was better than everyone because I read more books than everyone and I listened to podcasts and I was speaking at events and going to events. And I was like, anyone else, I was like, the fuck's wrong with you? Why are you watching the footy? You should be doing this. Your life sucks. Get better. And like, I then realized that, we need to understand where people are at. This is empathy, right? Like needed to understand where people are at and what people want from life. What I want from my life and why I do what I do is different to yourself or everyone else listening to this. And all that matters is I'm aware of what I want from my life, and I'm starting to think about things that I can improve upon personally to achieve that. Whereas a lot of people just go, and some people are really broke and they stay broke their whole life because they don't ever do the work around money mindset or beliefs that have got them there, and they don't ever start learning about saving, investing, tax, all these or how to increase your hourly wage. Like, how do you do all these things? People just, and I can completely understand that some people just aren't even aware of it. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're now aware of it. So the journey starts, and if you don't know where to start, just Google whatever it is, like top books or top podcasts in this topic, and start listening to them. And then you might go, cool, I want to go to an event, or I want to find a mentor, or I want to take a course. And you just keep learning. I'm not saying every course or mentor or book's going to change your life, because they won't. I've read heaps of duds. I've wasted heaps of money on events and coaches, but I'm always learning something, like something not to do again, or how I don't want to be, or I'm learning things that I want to include in my life and how I want to do things better.
Yeah, that's my number one rule, is just start. It doesn't have to be complicated. As you say, it can be a book, podcast. Just start. And for me, I was similar to you when I went on, the journey of personal development. That's all I was focused on. And like my partner wasn't. She's like totally different. Yeah. And I was like, why the fuck are you not doing this? And like getting angry at her for like living her life. And one thing I learned is, don't put the expectations of yourself onto someone else. And bro, that's helped so much, because they're a totally different person. They may not be into that at that certain time. It may be a few years down the track where they go, oh, I want to do this personal development stuff that Nick was doing. But at this current point, they're not doing that. So don't get angry at them.
Yeah, mate, I went through that same process. It was like the saying you're either growing together or growing apart. And that played on my mind for such a long time because I was so hungry to be better. And I was always like to my missus, come on, like, what the fuck are you doing? And there was moments and times where I was like, maybe we're not meant to be together because I'm hungry for it and she's not. But I also learned so much from her in different ways. But because I was purely learning about money and various things, she was learning about other things. She wasn't talking about it like I do. And I think there's also, when I had that personal development ego, all I spoke about, I didn't even watch footy anymore or anything. It was just like, it has to be about always mindset, this, that, and the other. And I lost touch with people. I was like, well, how the fuck can I help anyone if I've lost touch with the people that I want to hang around or the people that I want to inspire and help? And that's where you got to like find that balance, because at the end of the day, I don't learn personal development to be able to talk about it all the time. I learn it because I want to improve my quality of life and I want to improve my relationships and my whole experience. That's what it's there for. So, then being able to also drop advice or share books with people if I feel it's going to help them, and once again, if they're open to learning, is a powerful thing. But it's you know, I don't know whether you've ever experienced it, but some people go, well, how do I change my partner's mind, or how do I help my mate? It's like, you can't help people who don't want to be helped. Unfortunately, it sucks, but that's where you got to pull your head out of your ass and just go, look, I'm going to do the best that I can, and I'm going to live my best life, or I'm going to inspire those who are ready to be inspired. But the people who aren't ready, they'll be ready when they're ready. Like, and when they are, I'm here to be. And once again, whether you do what we're doing or if you just you have your own roles, it's like, well, they'll be your mate when they're ready, or they'll be back in your life when they're ready. And if not, you've just made space for a mate who, you know, is wanting to do the same things that you want to do, or is being proactive at fulfilling their values like you're doing yours.
Definitely. There's sayings like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Yep. That's the one I was looking for before. I didn't even attempt it because I'd forgotten it.
But yeah, like personal development can get addictive for me. Like I'm addicted to growth, but it is that balance where, yes, do personal development, learn about yourself, but actually take some time to implement it as well. Because you can consume all this knowledge, all the knowledge you want, but if you're not implementing it, like there's no point.
Exactly. It's, as we were saying earlier, like a lot of people spend time getting ready to get ready. It's like, I'll do it on Monday, or I just need to learn a little bit more, or I need to understand this. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but give yourself a deadline. Like if you know you want to, man, I know when I started my business, sorry, even before that. So 2014, when I started network marketing, there were a lot of people who had bigger networks, were able to communicate more than me, had all these things that, you know, I wish I had, which would have fast tracked my journey. But because they never took action, they were too busy learning about this, that, and the other. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to talk to as many people, tell as many people what I'm doing, and learn along the way. And if I look back, I'm glad I learned those lessons, and I would never want people to just jam information down people's necks like I did. But all of those experiences have helped me to today. And I think everything that I do now is like, even when I do videos or content or workshops, I don't necessarily always have everything ready to rumble. I just have goals and outcomes that I want to achieve, and I get to work to do it. And through each and every process, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't waste time doing that because that wasn't even needed. Or I'm like, I should have spent more time on that because that definitely was needed. And I think about what my business is like, or where the podcast is, and how much I've learned over the last 6 years, 5 years in doing that. I'm like, I see why a lot of businesses can't just go bang, because there's so many systems, processes, and probably a more relatable example for a lot of people. Like when I was writing a post before, that if you're ever looking for a mentor or a coach or a workshop or even a podcast to listen to, like, find people that you resonate with who have similar goals, lifestyles, and have been through what you've been through. Yes, there's some incredible coaches that can teach you about money, but they mightn't have good physical health, or they mightn't be living a kind of lifestyle that I want to live. So I want to learn from people. And there's actually a lot of business coaches who are broke as fuck, and they're trying to teach you how to make money. So why would I want to learn from them? Because they're about as helpful as Google or an online course, because I can just read exactly what they're saying. I want to learn from people who have the emotional understanding of what's it feel like when this comes up, like, or this level of fear, or the judgment, or all of these emotional experiences, because you can't pay for those emotional experiences. You have to live life to go through that and to really understand what that feels like. Whereas the logical stuff, literally, you can grab information fucking anywhere now.
Yeah. Don't focus on the house. Just take that first step, and the rest of it will unfold in front of you.
Yep, you'll figure it out.
Now let's talk about the man that can. How did it start, and what is it?
So it's a men's performance coaching company, I guess, or academy, and it started. It was like evolution for my own journey. So, as I mentioned, 2014, I got given that book, and I got really inspired about learning, and I realized that I had more control over my thoughts and what I could learn. And I just started posting on social media. Like I started doing posts, and I couldn't write very well, so my missus was draft. Like I'd write them, send them to her, and she'd send them back. All made them actually be able to be read, and that taught me how to write. But throughout that process, I had guys from like 2014 to maybe 2016 just being like, "Oh, I appreciate that. That's really inspired me," or "I can really relate to that." Da 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 da. And it got to a point where I had people going, "Oh, can you help me? Can you coach me?" And I was like, "No fucking chance. I don't want to be a coach. Like that's for people who don't or can't get any other job." And it got to a point where I was like, "Well, I want flexibility in my life. I want to be able to um, do something that I really love doing." And I was putting out the content anyway because I was learning and I was excited. And it came to this like perfect storm where I could get paid to do what I love and have complete control over it. And I was in Europe, in Austria. And I got a message from someone. I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was like, if you could tell your younger self or give your younger self some advice, what would it be? Or what would you do differently? And I know I just wanted access to blokes from all walks of life who were prepared to talk about what it felt like to achieve success, what it felt like to go through failure, fear, all that sort of stuff. Because, like I was saying, like you can read all about this stuff. I looked up to athletes and I saw that, but I never got to understand what the fuck was going through their head. So when I was experiencing depression or anxiety or self-esteem issues or jealousy, I was like, fuck, I must be the only, I can't talk about it because what if this is weird, or what if, people judge me for it. So I wanted a room full of blokes who are 7, 8 figure business owners, to young blokes who are just walking out of school, to chippies, to whatever, just blokes who are prepared to talk. And that's when I started men's groups. So we in Brisbane just started doing men's circles essentially. So we had blokes come in and just talk about what's going well in your life, what's not. And that just created the most incredible conversations where we had guys from literally what I wanted, all walks of life, lawyers, builders, athletes, talking about everything that was going on in their life. And it just created this fucking insane vibe. And blokes just kept coming back. And it was like their one release every month where they could get off their chest, and then they would literally walk away feeling elated and pumped up and excited about their life again. I was like, what can I do next to help these blokes? Because, there has to be more I could do. And that's when I was like, I'm doing a workshop. So I started doing 2-day workshops. And I had a podcast the whole time because I was just documenting once again my journey through audio and fucking Instagram and everything else. And it went from that. And then I was like, cool, but what about our guys who are flying up from Melbourne or Sydney to come to these workshops? How can I support them? And that's when we sort of went to the online model where we're at now with the Strong Men of Value. And it's always been based around what I know helped me. So I'm not, the Men That Can project isn't right for every bloke. Like I got this vetting program or vetting system where it's like, if I'd have a beer with you, I'll work with you and you're allowed into our community. And it's not because I'm a dick or I think I'm better. It's just like community is fostered by relatability and mateship. And if you've got people that are ruining that, it becomes toxic, right? So we've got a very incredible fucking community of blokes who are always wanting to be better. They got some incredible stories, but they're also, I'd have a beer with every single one of them, which is awesome. So it makes our Christmas parties fun. And yeah, that's how it started. It's just decided I was going to do it. And then the ripple effect, it was always like, what can I do next to help these blokes? What can I do next to support them? And then obviously, when you start learning more about business, it's also, well, what can I do next to create my dream lifestyle as well? So as I said, I sort of married, and I'm still learning as well, married those two things together. And now we've got a community of over 1,000 blokes who are learning to take ownership for their life, because I think once we take ownership for our life, we can be, do, and have whatever we want.
Dude, that is awesome, and I love everything you're doing, because where you are now is where I'm aspiring to be, bro. So I
Oh,
love
awesome.
everything that you're doing.
Appreciate it, man. And it like the most common, or when I got back from the wedding, everyone's like, "Oh, how's it coming back to reality?" I'm like, "It's fine. I fucking love my life. Like, I literally have the most incredible life. I get to literally be doing, have whatever I want on a daily basis. I'm not, I can always obviously improve things, but there's nothing that I would change. Like, I'm so grateful to be able to do things like this, or take time off whenever I want, or I get to read all the time, talk to cool people, like help have blokes go, because of this, my life's changed. So it's like the perfect storm. And it also holds me accountable to be better and to get more out of my life, because I think, like we were saying before, if I become stagnant, then the whole community becomes stagnant, not because they all follow me, but because the leader of the pack is like this. I can't even remember that bloody metaphor now, but it's like, I got to be moving fast to keep everyone else focused on their goals and who they want to become, because the more that I talk about what I'm doing and everything like that, like it just grows.
Exactly, and you're not going to grow by being stagnant.
Nah, and I'll get
So
bored.
where are you looking to take the business? Like, what are your goals?
Mate, so next year, I just met with my coach yesterday. Actually, we went through everything. So revenue wise, we're keeping it the same, but I want to be less hands on is the goal, because you get to a point where you realize money is not everything you think it is. Like or for me, it's like I get to, like I said, do what I want. It's just like, well, how can I make this experience better for people? So we've got an app. So it's working on the customer, like the user experience for the boys. I just want to make it more engaging for them. And because, we have a lot of in-person events and huddles that we call them, that are in Sydney, Melbourne, or obviously not with COVID, but we'll be rolling those back out. But then a lot of that community is online. So how can we make people stay more engaged? How can we help them build relationships within our community? Because a lot of them come in through seeing stuff that I've done, but they may be better related to Johnny down in Sydney or Johnny down in Melbourne. So I want to make sure that I'm helping them build networks and create mateships that are going to help them be better and also improve their quality of life. So the goal there is, each year we just want to get another 100 members, because we want to keep it. We want to keep the community aspect. And I know being online makes that challenging. So I do, but I don't also want that to be a limitation. So next year is adding another 100 members to the community. But making sure everyone still feels heard and valued. So that's going to be fucking good fun, man. We will run more in-person events. I've just been waiting for COVID to piss off, and also just keep growing the podcast. Like, the podcast is booming. So I want that to keep growing, because I think, much like what you're doing, I think the conversations that we have on the podcast is what blokes need to hear.
That's awesome, and I hope you can get down to Sydney soon. I'd love to go to one of your workshops.
Oh, mate, we will be. We got a community ready to rumble. So it's just waiting for COVID and the borders.
Exactly. Well, as we start to wrap up this podcast, a few last questions. What does having a better life mean to you?
It's a brilliant question. I think it's just a life that's aligned to who I feel I am as an individual, and it makes me feel fulfilled and gives me choice. I think I was talking about it yesterday. So many of us focus on who we need to be, or specific things that we want, like a nice Lambo or this, that, and the other. Whereas I sort of focused on what I needed to have to be able to decide what that looks like for me when I'm at that stage in my life, because I think we grow, and what becomes important to us changes as we continue to grow. So I knew for myself, it's like I wanted good people in my life. I want choice. So obviously the choice comes through money, and I want flexibility. and I want love. So, you know, at any point in my life, no matter what scenario of focus or what I'm going through, it's like I can still make sure I can do that because I've set up a business that's flexible and I've got incredible people around me who I care for and they care for me, and I'm just fucking happy. So it doesn't matter what I'm specifically focused on goal wise. Yes, I think that's to me what having a better life is making sure that those four things are ticked.
And how do you define success?
I define success as waking up every day, content in myself, but still with the desire to grow and be better.
Awesome. And Lachie, when your time's all up and done in this life, what would you like to be remembered for?
Being a loving husband and dad and mate, and someone who just genuinely cared. And, you know, I want everyone, every conversation I have with people, and this is cliche, but I want people to feel heard and feel valued. Like that's the goal. And I just, you know, I gave it a good crack. That's simple.
Awesome, brother. Super grateful for this conversation and thank you once again for jumping on. I've really enjoyed this chat.
Thanks so much for having me on, mate. And I love all the work that you're doing. I look forward to seeing where it goes for you. And congrats and good luck on the new arrival next year.
Appreciate it, bro. And for all the listeners, where's the best place to find you on social media?
Uh, at Lachlan Stuart, so LACHLANSTUART, so not the EW one, or the Man That Can project. So there's websites, and we're on all social platforms, and the podcast is the Man That Can project podcast.
Too easy. I'll put all your links in the bio. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you got some value out of this podcast, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.